Everything, the beginning of my research career started at Sayyid Amal Engineering College, where I did my electronics and communication engineering, and my thesis title was Aeropilot Configuration Monitoring and Alert System. Um, I have to say one thing about Sayyid Amal Engineering College. Uh, I started my engineering 15 years ago, and I was always curious about science and the miracles of science. And this place was pretty new. It was a 10 years old engineering college with not much of exposure, but the support that I've received from each and every single teacher of Syed Amal Engineering College is commendable. They tried everything to their level best. They pushed me to every boundary I can reach. And that's how I went on to publish a paper in a conference in China, Ningbo, which received the best paper award in the entire multi-conference. And thereon, I also received an award from the state government of Tamil Nadu for that achievement. So this actually sparked me that, there is an impact that science can make in my life and also in others' life. This propelled me continuously to move further with a thirst for quenching science. So this is the speciality about this college. So I thank each and every teacher, the management, for the extraordinary support and guidance and unbroken chain of support during my tough times between 2005 to 2009. Um, so now, after that, I went on to receive so many prestigious national and international awards. The recent one is the National Science Foundation and Georgia Institute of Technology travel grant to participate in the International Meeting of Chemical Sensor at Montreal, Canada. I was also shortlisted as one among 25 young researchers under 35 years old who is doing extraordinary research in chemical senses. In 2018, I was one among Australia's top 20 young scientists and innovator. I'm also Australia's 3 minutes thesis champion and also the People's Choice winner. What is this competition is about? This competition, you have to summarize your research in 3 minutes. That can be understood by even to an 8 years old child. So I won the school competition, college competition, university competition, and went on to represent RMIT University in the Asia Pacific level. I was also chose one among Asia Pacific young innovators. In 2017, I was the People's Choice winner of the RMIT Innovation Challenge. I'm the Victorian Public Speaking Champion and also one among Australia's best English speakers in 2017. I'm quite involved in UNESCO. I work with UNESCO on different capacities. The recent one is to develop a curriculum for children in refugees without any teaching aid. I'm also quite involved in European Union research programs. So I was the graduate opening speaker of the European Union graduate workshop in New Zealand. Before that, I went to Ireland for a leadership workshop, and I got the Academic Excellence Alliance Award to travel to Imperial College London. I got to America by writing a grant that is the Molecular Foundry Grant. I also received the University of Singapore graduate fellowship scholarship, Amity University national scholarship, and Indian Republic Day gold medal for education from the government of Tamil Nadu. This is for the achievement in China, and hopefully and thankfully I was involved in quite a lot of Rotary Club activities, which earned me a significant achievement award for AIDS awareness in 2009. That's all my education background and awards. Here are some of my selected publications. I try not to submit papers on low impact journals because that's the environment I've been groomed. So most of my publications are really in highly reputable journals, and I'm writing quite a lot of manuscripts as well right now in collaboration and on my own. Okay, now we come to the real part of the presentation. Why do we need high impact factors papers? I'm sorry, it's quite early in the morning. It's 3 degrees here in Melbourne, so I'm a bit stumbling. I think I'll be okay as I go. Why do we really need high impact factors? Okay, number one, let me speak from my experience. So in my undergrad, I had two conference publications. One is in China, the other one is in UK, which actually got me the national scholarship from Amity University and National University of Singapore, because in my undergrad I had a couple of papers. Then when I went on to University of Singapore, I published a few papers which got me a prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru scholarship to go to America. Then when I went to America, I published high impact factor papers which got me the Australian Research Council scholarship. So your publication has a great impact and connection with every single step of your career. Not just that, how do they choose you for awards? When you have high impact papers and grants and patents, you actually receive money to do more research, because that's how they judge you. If you're able to publish high impact factor papers, they think you're capable of promoting high impact research. So, and also to apply for scientific collaborations. Say, for example, I did collaborate with Australian National University and Queensland Technical University, and also a few universities in London and in France. So this was possible because I was able to establish a high impact publications. So say, for example, to become a member of a scientific commission, to evaluate grants, you need high impact factors. So this is the reason we actually push for high impact factors. It's not just that. It is very important to publish a high impact factor paper or research for nation building. Say, for example, today every single nation is dependent on others for finding a COVID-19 vaccination. But imagine if we all started this research much in advance, foreseeing all these circumstances. I think we would have been in a certain stage. So it is very important to have our own high impact research, not potentially publications, for nation building. Today, the whole world look upon us on our achievements on ISRO. It's just because this mission was established 60 years ago, and there was a high impact research going on for the last 50, 60 years. So this is the major importance of high impact research. If you do a high impact research, that's going to benefit quite a lot of people and also your nation. Sometimes when you publish high impact factor papers, it do help the future generation, and you make a lot of changes in your own life. So this is what I have experienced when it comes to high impact publications. Okay, you see there's quite a lot of penguins, and there's one special one. Who is that special one? If you know, in India, on an average, they publish quite a lot of papers, unlimited number of papers. But how many papers get cited? A paper that's not cited by somebody is something that's not a knowledge transfer. It means you have done a research for 3, 4 years and nobody really appreciated it or acknowledged it. More than that, your time, effort, your and also your resources being not actually used by the future generation. So it is always very important to do a high impact publication. At the same time, a publication that will get a reputation by the future researchers and cited by many. So we always try to become this one penguin who stand out from others. Okay, now importance of literature survey. I have to tell you, all the places that I went, I had a very rigorous literature survey experience. When your literature survey is perfect, 50% of your research is almost done. When you do your literature survey properly, you actually understand what are the flaws, what are the holes that are in the existing research. And from there, you can think how you can build your research from those flaws. After all, a research is an advancement of a failure of somebody else. So make sure you all do a very thorough literature survey. I think if you're a PhD student or if you're entering into a new research project, it is very important to spend at least 1 year to 6 months of your time completely dedicated to research, literature survey. Say for example, my PhD was on acetone sensing and breath analysis. I did have every single paper that's published at least 30, 40 years before, and it's all filed and stacked very nicely, so that I can pull out proofs for any argument and discussion. Since I've read all those papers, it actually gave me more idea that what I can proceed and propel further. So it is very important to do a literature survey. Here, I would like to introduce something called a journal club. When I was in America in Professor Michael F. Cromie's lab, I was introduced to this journal club. What we will do is once in a week, 5 or 6 members of our lab, we will sit together and discuss one paper of our research on own. It's usually a 10 minutes presentation where we highlight the abstract, then talk about the important steps that's been achieved and what are the results and conclusion. So it at least gave us an opportunity to discuss our research once in a week with our fellow colleagues and to hear their research from them. From there, what happened, we actually started discussing, probably, this is something what you do is interesting. Is there a possibility we can collaborate and publish a paper together? Or if we combine my idea and your idea, there is a scope, there is a new mechanism, or a new scientific evaluation could happen. So maybe that can be filed as a patent. This has to be very strictly introduced in every single organization. Otherwise, I have seen this quite a lot of my friends who does PhD in India, who always did literature survey at the end of their thesis writing, which is absolutely toxic and harmful. This should never be done. The literature survey should be done in the first year. It is the responsibility of the student. It's definitely not the responsibility of the faculty. I would like to share a very interesting thing that happened in Australia a few years ago. A girl did PhD for 7 years, and she ended up finding that she is even missing some of the fundamentals of her PhD, and her PhD being driven without a basic physics. Then she filed a case on her supervisors saying that she been not guided properly. Then the supervisors gave an excuse and an explanation that I have 10 other PhD students. I have handsome amount of teaching load. All I can do is maximum spare half an hour in a week giving some guidance to the student. Then the verdict was like this. So literature survey is the essential part of a student. It have nothing to do with the supervisor. So this way the case was in the favor of the staff members. So what I'd like to convey here is, if you're a PhD student, just focus on your literature survey as hard you can. Find out every single and identify every single problem. The other thing I would like to share with all of you is what COVID-19 has given to us is this sense of virtual learning. In the past, we all had excuses like, oh, a group meeting needs a room, a presentation set up, we all come together. I think that's no more necessity for that. This very lecture itself a testimony for that. I'm sitting from some other part of the world, which is like 12 hours away from India, and sharing knowledge with you. So from now, all the supervisors organize one presentation with your student at least once a week. Make sure you spend 30 minutes with your supervisors, with your students on a weekly basis. Say, for example, I had 5 PhD supervisors in my PhD, and everyone gave me half an hour a week. my whole Friday was dedicated to meeting with all of them, which actually pushed me to do something in the rest of the week, because on Fridays they would ask me what you did this week. At least what I had was a paper to present or a journal to share with them, telling that, oh, I read this, it was really interesting, and I thought I'll share with you. And again, they still ask me, what sort of experiments you did? Do you have any results to present this week? So there was a certain momentum going on, which actually helped me and motivated me to do something every single week. So I want to bring this, introduce this culture in our Indian research setup as well. Like I said, 30 minutes per week for a student, and 6 presentation for a student per year. That is every 2 months. You ask for if it is a first year, you ask them for literature survey, what you have done in the last 2 months. Give me a consolidated presentation for 1 hour of what you have read and understood in this 2 months. So this actually will motivate the student, will also make them work very hard in the first year of PhD in understanding the literature. Hence, like I told you, how important is literature survey. Now let me share with you some important tools to organize our literature. There's two beautiful and innovative tools for literature collection. One is Mendeley, the other one is EndNote. EndNote is a bit expensive. You got to spend $30 for a year, I believe. But Mendeley is free and an open source. Let me show you how do I organize my literature using EndNote. My university offered me EndNote for free. Karthikeyan sir, can you see my screen? Can someone see my screen?
Yes, Sultan. Yes, Sultan.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Look, this is how EndNote looks. Rather than collecting papers and posting them on folders, it's actually so useful to use these apps to organize all your literature. Say, for example, this is just one of my research EndNote. Like I have several EndNote for all different research work. Say, for example, I put all the books in one folder, proposal in other ones. This is one of my students' chapter, which who is dealing with the similar research. And I also put all my research in folders like this. The beautiful thing about them is you will know who is the author, which year it's published, the title of the paper, and you can also attach the PDF versions of the book. So it's quite easy to bring all the literature together in one folder. See, you can open the literature as well, the folders as well. So I encourage all of you to use this software called Mendeley.
Excuse me, sir. We are unable to see your screen, sir.
You are unable to view the screen, sir.
No, you just pin the user. Pin the user. Please use the pin.
We have pinned the user, sir, but we are unable to see.
No, we are. Sultan, again.
And kindly pin the presenter's another name, ma'am.
Another name,
it is
madam.
visible. Another name. It is visible.
Okay.
The same name as repeated in S series. You just go and see. Sultan, you can continue, Sultan.
Okay. What I'll do is let me explain things for you one more time. Can you see the screen again?
No, sir.
Yeah. I can see.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Sir, now it is visible. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
No problem. So this is the EndNote tool where you can organize your literature in a much organized fashion. You can see I have consolidated books in one, a proposal in one. So my literature get connected all in once. You know, the best part of this, you can actually reference this into your Word document just by clicking and insert EndNote references. So this way you completely get rid of the manual way of organizing your literature. Let me also show you how do I do that. This is one of the recent manuscript that I'm writing. And if you see all my literature, all my references, all my references are bought here using this EndNote structure. And another thing, say for example, you submitted this paper to one journal and it got rejected, which has a certain style of referencing. Now you wanted to send it to the other journal. So what you do with your EndNote is go here and go to edit and change the referencing styles. So it completely changes your paper from one referencing style to the other referencing style. And you can also use the manuscript templates, which you can download the templates of all the journals. If you see ACTA, Palmasin, Public Health, this EndNote and Mentally, they have the format of all the journals. When you give your Word document into this, it will completely change your document into the requirement of the journal's requirement, and also it will change the referencing style. So this way, it eradicates a bigger problem of formatting your manuscript, formatting your references, and also formatting your figures and table of contents. So I strongly encourage all of you to use Mentally, which is a free source. I hope this will be a big of use for you in the future. And now, say for example, you do research in certain area, and you want to know what are the new trend that's happening in your area of research. What you do is you go register yourself in academia and register your area of research. Say for example, I did my PhD in gas sensing. So I went on to register in academia with gas sensing, acetone sensing, diabetes monitoring, breast cancer, with all these terms. So what it does, when someone publish a new paper, it automatically push that into my email inbox. So rather than me go searching for literature, the literature comes to me on a daily basis. So what I do, usually I go check those papers quickly. If that's related to my research, I get the references and put it in my EndNote or in Mentally. If it is not so relevant to my area of research, I usually disregard it. So this is how what you can do is bring all your literature into one folder, and this is more like a newspaper that comes to your doorstep. It's not much of an effort to go search for what's happening new in your field of research. So please subscribe to Academy as well. I strongly encourage all of you to do this. Now, the most important thing in the field of research is identifying your competition. Say, for example, if you're doing research in a 5G network or in embedded system, it's quite generic, but it can be in depth as well. Say, for example, you're doing research in botany, especially in some plants, or you're doing research in nanotechnology, especially on a material called zinc oxide and TiO2, or anything. It could be anything. What you do is you identify your competitions. First, you have to go look for the people who are doing research in your area. Use keywords to find your competition and track them regularly. What I do is there are 5-6 groups around the world, one in Israel, one in Britain, one in China, one in Japan, one in America, who does research, not exactly like me, but similarly like our research. What I do once a month, I make sure I go into their websites, group websites, and check whether they have published any new papers in that area of research. I track it. Make sure I read them. This is basically a reality check that your research is not repeated by somebody else in different part of the world. In case, if I do something very similar to them, I change the direction of my research so that you will not have much problem in publishing that paper in the future. And moreover, I always take a leap or something much advanced in what do they do. Say, for example, let me tell you in a very simple word. Say, for example, if somebody is making Coca-Cola and I'm also making Coca-Cola in my lab, what I do is, oh, you're making Coca-Cola, I'm going to mix a vanilla flavor in my Coca-Cola and make it a Coca-Cola vanilla or a chocolate or a different flavor. So what will happen when both of us publish that paper, the reviewer will find my paper more attractive in comparison to them. He will think it's just a normal drink. This is a drink with a flavor. So this is very important. And also what I do, I think of adding other elements. If somebody is doing a similar research, experimental work like me, I also think to add some more theoretical research around it, or uh, or add some figures, or try to propose more future work to make my research look much advanced than them. This is the importance of identifying your competition. Say, for example, if somebody is trying to publish in a journal of chemistry, I also try to compete with them in the journal of chemistry so that your work get equally cited like their work. Say, for example, when you cite few work, you not just cite one paper, you cite a group of literature that is relating to your literature. When you publish your papers on a high impact journal, your competition work and your work get cited by the future researchers. So these are the importance of identifying your competition. And the one thing that I want to caution you, if somebody is your competition and you have identified them as your competition, never ever choose them as your reviewers, to be on safer side, because they will always try to push you down. And moreover, they know your research inside out just because they do a similar research like you, and probably they will give you really tough time during the review process. Well, it is an acceptable ethics being in science, because um, everyone has the right to ask question from someone who is trying to publish a paper, and as a reviewer you have all sort of rights to do that. But when you give your paper, when you give your a paper to your reviewer, he will be more hard on you, and it could delay your publication. So this is very important in terms of identifying your competition. Now, I told you in the beginning that we need to do a very good literature survey. Again, we need to identify your competition. You know what does this do? This actually helps you to identify your research question. Say, for example, uh, you have done an amazing literature survey. You have put all your data into EndNote in an organized format, and you have also identified your competition. Now, this will give you a lot of questions. You will start to ask so many questions to yourself. You will discuss those questions with your colleagues, with your supervisors. This is actually a research question. So that group has done that. That literature is saying that what I'm going to do new. So this will be the whole aim either of your thesis or of your paper that you're trying to publish. So when you start to address those research questions, you build experiments, you build software setups, and you come out with the results. So this is the most important thing of seeking a research question. So all the supervisors here, what my supervisor did at the end of the first year, I gave them 6 presentations on a weekly basis. I meet all my 5 supervisors for half an hour to discuss what I'm doing. All of them told one thing to me, Sultan, at the end of the first year, you need to have 15 to 20 research questions, which you will actually build as a research setup or a research process in the coming 2-3 years. So every time I read a paper, I always used to think, oh, what I'm going to do with this, what I'm going to do something new with this. So please think of that in that in that aspect all the time. How are you going to actually frame research questions? So this is very important. Okay. I'm sure you all know this funny picture, but he's not a funny man. Do you guys know who is this? Hello?
It's Albert
Okay,
Einstein.
beautiful. Who doesn't know him?
I
Who doesn't know him? Yes. Every time you see Albert Einstein in my presentation, it means it's a reviewer. How a reviewer would think when you see this Albert Einstein. So I will also give you a perspective of a reviewer when you see this image. Number one, we receive quite a lot of papers from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, China, Sri Lanka, and from Africa. So the problem is, say for example, I have showed you a graph here. This is one of my research. So what I did is I synthesized zinc titanium nanoarrays and tested it for its efficiency for gas sensing. So I heated my materials to 350 degrees centigrade, and I also applied a bias of 0.1 to 9 volt under shining a 365 nanometer UV light. So a material, zinc titanate, is being put under three different conditions. Number one, it's being heated. On the top, a light source is being shined on it. At the same time, a bias of 0.1 to 9 volt DC is also supplied into the material. So what the papers from the subcontinent and Africa does, I'm sorry, I'm not blaming, I'm trying to point out the mistakes that we keep on repeating. People do not explain what is the mechanism happening. They do send amazing results with a fancy research setup, but at times we lag in explaining the phenomena and concept behind it. Say for example, what the papers from India does is they say, oh, I increased the bias from 0.1 to 9 volt, the graphs changed from red color to orange color. When I increase the bias from 3 volt to 6 volt, the efficiency increased by 80%. That's the green line. So when I turned on the light, the efficiency increased. This sort of terms, not actually explaining what is the concept behind it. Okay, let me explain this, my research, in a very simple way. What happens is when I heat my material, the crystallinity of my material increases, which actually increases the conduction of electron. At the same time, when I shine light, the electron hole pairs are generated, and which actually increases more number of electrons on the surface of the material. When I increase the bias from 0.1 to 9 volt, the movement of electrons get faster. So this is the reason I'm able to achieve a result from red to orange color, which is the increase in current when the material is being heated and the light is being shined and the bias is being increased from 0.1 to 9 volt. This is my research. But I would like to give a minute for all of you to think, how would you present your research like this? Not just explaining graphs, not just explaining research setup, but actually explaining the science behind it. Take a minute and reflect on yourself, please. Okay, beautiful. So from now, we will not just explain those graphs, which is completely meaningless, but we will explain what's happening behind, why is that graph is increasing. That will actually boost up your publication. This is what a reviewer looks for. This is what a reviewer of a high impact journal looks for. Has this person has understood the basic science or mechanism or principles behind his research? This is also very important to question yourself every single time, what is happening in my research? So If you manage to explain that, you actually get a pass from the reviewer for the paper to get published. Now, when you do research, make sure you explore your research to the last point. Like when you're doing experiments or coding, don't stop when you get a satisfactory results. Stop only when you got exhausted. I can't do anything more on this, this is the best I can do. And what I did, I told you that I passed uh, um, a bias of zero point 0.1 to 9 volt. I wasn't satisfied. I applied 15 volt, I applied 25 volt, then I applied 50 volt to my material until my material got burnt, because it couldn't tolerate that much amount of voltage into it. So this is the way you explore your research to the finest of the end you can. What was my reviewer's question? The reviewer asked me, okay, you have passed 0.1 to 9 volt. What happened if you pass 25 volt and 50 volt? Since I've already done that, I had no trouble in explaining that to him, that I exploited my material to this extreme, and here is the result. I even sent him the picture of how my material got burnt, and my paper got published very easily. So never ever stop your research until you and your supervisors think that you have exploited every single potential of your work. Most of the time, I don't know whether it's luck or where does that happen from. There's something you miss. That's where a reviewer identify. That's the reason they are reviewers. So it's also human tendency to identify mistakes of others and the shortcomings of others very easily in comparison to what they actually have done good things. So please exploit your research to that extreme, push it to your boundaries. Now, be very open for collaboration. This is the reason that I keep on telling that you should have a very open-minded and open-ended conversation with your friends and colleagues. It is very important to combine your research with some other modules as well, because the world is getting really competitive and the publication qualities are increasing, unlike 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So make sure you collaborate with like-minded people. Say, for example, if you're doing one pattern of research in your lab or in your group or in your college, make sure you identify a similar person who does the same in other college. Ask them and come to an agreement how we can work together. Say, for example, my student will take the first author. Maybe if your student does the same work, they both can go as two first authors. Or we will choose someone who does maximum work as the first author and give the second author to the other student. So this way, you also increase your number of publication, which will give more opportunities for you in the future, because the world has become very vicious, that it is very important to have more number of publication and also high impact publication. So when you collaborate with your friends or with your colleagues, your publication count also increase. At the same time, you get to put two different perspectives into one paper. That will actually significantly increase the quality of your publication. So be very open for collaborations from now. Okay, now what does a successful collaboration means? Like I told you, say for example, I'm doing one research and someone from SAEC Engineering College is doing a pretty similar research like me. Number one, we discuss, we share ideas, so that, say for example, if I'm doing a mistake, you can point out to me and say like, oh Sultan, what you're doing is not so right, probably you can try in this direction. I can give you similar sort of support to you as well. It is very common in the Western world to visit another lab. I usually go to Australian National University for some research on a monthly basis. because we don't have certain experiment where they have it. So you can share facilities as well. And the third one is to bring two institutions into your manuscript. When the reviewers see that two institutions of different nature has come together to work on a research problem, that means there's a considerable amount of effort being put on this research, and potentially there's more minds involved. It means more novel ideas being shared. So this would give on the first step that possibly this research is something beneficial and something of high impact. So make sure from now collaborate with your friends and favor each other in every possible way you can. Okay, after this we will take a 10 minutes of break. But I'm going to explain to you what is plan A, plan B, plan C, P1 and P2. Okay, say for example, you do a research and it did not end up in the way you wanted it to come out. So what you do, you always have plan B option. If you don't have plan B option, you will do a research for 3 years and you will see that your research is failed and you will feel you have lost completely everything. So make sure if you're a PhD student or if you're guiding a student, you always tell them, prepare for a plan B. You can buy research resources, you can spend more money, but the time that's been lost in a life of a PhD student or a researcher, you can never get that back. So it is always be wise to work on two problems of similar nature to back up if something goes wrong. Maybe the plan B will work out. So I also had I knew that my problem is pretty novel, my PhD work, and also the current researches that I do is pretty novel, but I always have a plan B of everything of my research. What I did when I tested my materials for breath analysis to diagnose diabetes from breath, I was also testing my materials to identify UV light radiation from solar cells to identify spots where there's quite a lot of UV radiation to protect people from skin cancer. If you know Australia has quite a lot of skin cancer, and our ozone layer is almost damaged. So I had two parallel research going on with a single material that I synthesized, but luckily both worked well. Say for example, if my first one didn't work, I would have actually wrote a thesis on the second part of my research. So I'm stressing this point again to have a plan B. Now, what is C? C is a conference paper. Yeah, we all like to go for conferences. My life actually started going to a conference in China. But the mistake that we all do is like we do a really good research with the handsome data, which will go into a high impact publication. Just because we wanted to travel somewhere or participate in a conference, we sometime by mistake compromise or good data into a conference. A couple of years ago, I was organizing a conference, and I received a paper from Bangladesh, which is a fantastic work, which will go into a really high impact journal. So I contacted the author and I told him like, look, you have a pretty amazing data. I think it's not worth publishing this in a conference, because most of the time the conference publications are not being regarded as the annexure 1 and annexure 2, which which keep changing all the time. I've been following the Anna University's annexure for the last 3-4 years, and every year things change. So a conference which is in 2012, which may not be in 2014. So that way you actually lose your good data into a conference. And also one more thing, when you take good data into your conference publication, sometimes your ideas get stolen by others. Say for example, we receive a lot of papers from the Indian subcontinent and Africa with pretty novel new ideas, but they will not have lab facilities. When someone see these ideas in a conference proceeding in a Western world can easily duplicate that idea within a week or a month because they have all the facility to do so. So, okay, coming back to that story, I told the author from Bangladesh um, that it's a good data. I don't think so. You should publish this in the conference. You should hold this for a good journal paper. He said, I would like to see Australia. That's the reason I'm applying for this, and I'm also having a funding. Then I negotiated with him to publish only some part of that research work, and he still came here to present that paper. And later, he published that in a high impact journal as well. And he did write an acknowledging email to me, thanking me for that suggestion. So often we all do this mistake in India, especially the new PhD students. In the first 2 years of their work, they see they haven't published anything. What I think, okay, at least let me go and um, publish a conference paper, and they compromise all the 2 years of PhD work in a conference. Again, when you publish a paper in a conference, you cannot publish that same data into a journal paper as well. So be careful on this. Always follow this plan A, plan B, plan C model, which will actually benefit you on a long run as well. And saying that, it is also important to travel to conferences. I will never discourage anyone to travel to conferences. We need to travel to conferences. We need to meet new people, discuss more ideas. Most of the time when you travel to conferences, people who are very genuine, they give you more insights and ideas to do further research. Sometimes you meet most of your collaborators in a conferences. You go to a conference, you see a nice person who start a very productive conversation with you. At the end of the conversation, he will say, how about we collaborate together and do some work? So it is important, but be mindful of what you share in a conference. Say, for example, I did say that I used zero point 0.1 to 9 volt of my important data on a high impact publication, but at the same time, I told you I also used a 25 volt and a 50 volt. These data cannot be used in a high impact publication because my material was almost degrading. I put those data into a conference, which is pretty much look like a useless thing to me. So that's what people in the Western world does. They're being very shady. They do not expose their main research. They expose some of the parts which is not so very useful in the part of their research to the conferences. And from there, I'd like to give you a short 10 minutes break, and we will come back to discuss more of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please take a comfort break. We will be back at 10:30 a.m.
Hello, everyone.
Sultan, you continue. Yeah, Sultan.
Karthikeyan sir, do you think we should start again?
Yeah. Please, go ahead.
Okay, sure. Thank you, everyone, for your warm comments. It's really overwhelming to see those beautiful comments from you. Thank you for that. There are certain questions being asked, and I would like to address that before I go into the next session. Someone has asked me, what is a Mendeley? What is Mendeley? Let me go back into my presentation. Okay, here you go. Like I told you, EndNote, Mendeley is also a similar software.
Sultan, just a minute, Sultan. We'll have a separate session for question and answer. You just finish the things, and we will have a separate question. Then only it will be useful. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
We'll have a separate question and answer session.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, let me start my presentation again. Okay, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me again. I hope you all had a nice break. Now, we discussed about Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Now, what is P1 and P2? That is patents. When you have an extraordinary research that no one has ever done, that's when you're eligible for a patent. Patents are very important to safeguard the intellectual property of anybody. So, but this is a very hard and a tedious task. Usually a patenting takes at least 4 to 7 years to register and get it executed. You are a PhD student or a postdoctoral researcher or a professor in a university, and you have come up with a novel idea. There are two different kinds of patent. Number one is a national patent and the international patent. India has its own patenting system. Then the other two major patents are European patent and American patent. China has bought its own legislation recently saying that no matter what sort of patent is around the globe, we follow our own patent system. So this way, they have actually manipulated quite a lot of the existing patents and made it look like their own one. And there's no restrictions to use others' patent in China. This is a reason, we all got to be very careful of registering our patents as well. But when things are being done inside China, that nothing can be done about it. But if someone is trying to manipulate your own research in India or America or some other part of the world, they can be easily sued using this patenting system. So when I was trying to file few patents, my supervisors were very cautious of it. They said, save enough number of data for your thesis, then consider filing patents and other things. But still, I'm on several intellectual property rights. I hope and I wish everyone should, consider filing patents of their research. This can be achieved only when you have really understood phenomena of what's happening in your research, and also a great literature survey. I know somebody who actually started working on a patent application without doing a good literature survey, and within a month time, when he started reading papers more, he found out that this is being already done by somebody 30 years ago. So with the point that I would like to stress again here is the importance of literature survey. If you don't do a good literature survey, you will never be confident in filing patents, because you really don't know if someone has already done this work or not. So that is the concept of Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, P1 and P2. I would like everyone to consider this strategy. This is something Professor Sriram Ramakrishna taught me. He is the Vice Chancellor of National University of Singapore, one of the most cited researcher in the world, and especially #1 researcher in the field of material science, who was my master thesis supervisor. My master's thesis was just 6 months, and this is what he told me: look, Sultan, you have just 6 months. Do a short literature survey for 2 months and start to work on 2 different projects, and you really have a very short time and something will work out. So I would like to request all the supervisors to execute such action plans for your PhD students in the future. Okay, what does a typical reviewer do? I'm gonna tell you with utmost honesty. I hope this session doesn't get recorded, and hopefully, there's not much consequences for me in the future of speaking truth. But I'd like to share all these aspects with you. #1, if you are a reviewer, and if you are a well-known reviewer, you on an average, you at least get 10 papers a month for review. You could be a professor, you could be a postdoctoral researcher, or you could be a senior researcher. But what does a professor does? He give that paper to one of the lab member. Say, for example, I'm a postdoctoral researcher, I get few papers for review. The problem is the papers never get reviewed actually by the reviewer. Somebody in the lab does. This is my experience. This is what I have seen. Maybe some professors would actually read those papers. If you see a paper is a good manuscript is 15 to 20 pages, nobody really read your paper line to line. What they do is they read your abstract, then they go to the conclusion. Then they skim through the images and sometimes some people read how the phenomena work, and they ask you a few questions. Oh, you have said this, you have done this. How are you going to justify this? I significantly see that these data is important, that it is missing. Can you provide this data in the revised manuscript? This is what happens. Okay, this is at least a fair reviewer who actually skim through your paper, read abstract, and give you some suggestions. When a professor give a paper to me, especially a not newly budding researcher who is pretty young and who have a lot of time, I will read the paper line by line just to prove to the professor that I've done considerable effort on reviewing this paper. And also in the early career of your research, you need to do a very thorough reviewing process for a learning for yourself. Most of the time, a paper that comes to me that completely gets shattered, what do you call, in India, you call it a postmortem. Everywhere in the world, it's same, the postmortem. I do a postmortem of a paper. We'll come up with 20 to 30 questions. #1, I'm very curious. #2, I really wanted to give a tough time to the person who submitted the paper. #3, I want to tell my professor that, look, professor, I have spent so much time. So you be nice to me on some other matters later. So there is quite a lot of politics, there's emotions and ambitions all come together, all sort of feelings come together. So this is what will happen to when you submit a paper. And there are some professors, their mood plays a very important role in reviewing a paper. Say, for example, if they had a fight with their wife, if they are not well, that also get reflected on your paper. I have seen people rejecting a paper just by seeing it. They see it and they say like, oh, I don't like this paper, this is rejected. Or sometimes they have so much thing to do, and they will schedule this paper one day before the actual reviewing date. So what they will do, okay, let me do it after lunch, let me do it after dinner, and finally they will do just 10-15 minutes before they sleep. So these are all truths. This is human nature. So not always your hard work and efficiency get rewarded. It also have to deal with who you're sending your paper to, how it been reviewed, what is the weather of the country, what is the mood of the person. All these things play a very important role in determining your next level of your paper. So these are absolute truths, but saying that there are also real sides. There are professors who sincerely review it, who really do understand that this could be a possible capability of a student. Probably I'll let him publish this paper. Probably I can ask him few more questions in a comfortable way, so that he or she can actually furnish those data in the amended document and get it published. There are people like that, and there are few people in my lab who are like extremely kind. Look, Sultan, this paper has come from India, Bangladesh, and with their research facilities, they have done a fantastic work. I think I'm going to be easy on this person. There are people like that. So you sort of see all sort of people in reviewing process. So, but if you do certain things that I'd like to explain to you in the coming slides, there is a high chance, at least at an appearance level, at a presentation level, you can get pass, which will actually make the reviewer more curious to read your paper. So this is a typical reviewer's attitude. Number one, like I said, an importance of the title of your paper. Make sure you have a title that attracts or catches the attention of the reviewer. As soon as they see the title, they say, oh, okay, this looks interesting. Maybe let me consider reading the abstract. Oh, when you have a good abstract, let me see the keywords. And when they see a keyword, they think, okay, possibly it's nice. Let me read the experimental part. What is the result part, conclusion part? This is how you actually intrigue a reviewer to read your paper. It's exactly like a movie. Nowadays, all the movies that coming out, whether in the Hollywood, Bollywood, Mollywood, wherever it is, they have a very attractive name. Sometimes those names are really crazy and have no meaning to it, but it does catches people attraction. So look at your publication like a movie. Number one, you need to have really good title. Say for example, what a reviewer does, when they see the title, they Google the title. They immediately cut, copy, paste your title. And if they find a similar titles like your title, they think, probably this is one of those stereotype research. They have done the same what others have done. But if you have a title that Google cannot search, that means he think, okay, this is a new title, so probably he has done something. Let me read his paper. So this is why when you frame your titles, you always cross-check it with Google. You type a title, you write 10 to 12 titles, share all those titles with your lab mates and supervisor, and finalize one. It's like naming your children with numerology, astrology all together. That's what you got to do, like what we do in India. At the same time, it shouldn't be too long. Study of blah 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 for 2 lines. Like they will be upset. They will, oh, such a big thing. And also they think, when you can't be very precise in naming your paper title, they also think probably he's not a very efficient person in articulating. This is when the generic comment of calling your paper with not so good English will come out as a first point. So your title play a very important role in kindling the curiosity of your reviewer. At the same time, the title itself predicts how good you are in English. This is a typical psychology of a reviewer. Don't make it too long, don't make it too short. At the same time, when you have a title, make sure you Google it and compare if similar title exists. If similar title exists, make sure you keep on modifying your title in a logical way, so that there is not a significant plagiarism in your title. So this is your first step. It's like naming your movie. Let me show one of my recent publication. Here you can say zinc titanate nanoarrays with superior optoelectrochemical properties for chemical sensing. You know what? I chose this title after 25 to 30 iteration, discussing with my supervisors, Googling, then discussing with my friends. And it is also important, your title should convey in a very logical sense what is your research is about. Say, for example, zinc titanate nanoarrays. Okay, this guy has synthesized zinc titanate nanoarrays, and he is studying the optoelectrochemical properties of this material, and it is a chemical sensing work. So my title gives the reviewer an idea of what is my research is about. I'm sure he would have Googled this title, and possibly he did not find a combination of my title. Still today, when I Google it, I Googled my title this morning just because, I'm confronting myself in front of all of you. I'm sure one of you would go and Google this title. No title exists like my title. Then I also mentioned about importance of collaboration. If you see the CNRS Institute of from France, and also this Australian National University, we did collaborate with them. They did some small work for my paper. Although I'm the first author in the paper, their names are being also added. When a reviewer see this, they think, okay, this paper has gone from Australia to France, and then it has gone to Australian National Universities, which is one of the top 10 universities in the world. So probably there's bright minds involved in this work. Um, so this is what an impression a reviewer get. This is also again a psychology of a researcher, a reviewer. Now you see keywords. I choose the best of my keywords about my research. Say for example, my research is zinc titanate nanoarrays, it's acetone sensing. Like I told you, I shine light, pass bias, and it's amperometric sensing. I put all of them together. Someone asked me a question, how to identify my area of research and publications. Let me just answer that question at this moment. Say, for example, you are doing research in the area of, let me choose satellite communication. So in satellite communication, you're studying the network or transmission or the digital strategy or digital communication, whatever it is. You type all those terms in Google and it will automatically suggest some literature. This is how you identify some of the oldest paper in your area of research. Say for example 1960s, 1980s. It is very important to read those fundamental papers. From there you will see where are those fundamental papers are cited, and you go read those papers. This is how it's a chain of network. You read from the ancient thing to the upcoming literature, and you'll also read the latest one. Say for example, if you go type in Google high impact journals of satellite communication, it will give you all the titles, all the journal names. From now, you go into the journal website, which are a high impact journals of your area of research, and make sure you track them on a monthly basis. You go and check whether there's new paper published in your area of work. So this is how you keep track of high impact work using keywords. Keywords is absolutely important because in the future, after 100 years, when someone is going to type ZnTiO3, zinc titanate, amperometry, acetone sensing, my papers will be automatically referred to him by the Google Scholar. So this is the importance of keywords. What you want to tell about you to the future generation, what you would like to say about you to the future researchers, in what terms you would like to be identified as. My name is Sultan, so you all identify me as Sultan. This is what the keywords of your paper represent, your true sense of your research. So like I told you, the importance of title, it shouldn't be too short, too long. It should convey a clear message of what your research is about. At the same time, it should never be able to find by Google. They say Google find everything, but you got to be more wiser than Google, because it's after all an artificial intelligence, and humans are more smarter than machines, I believe. And the keywords, these are the important of this slide. At the same time, the importance of collaboration with different groups, which actually boost the reviewer to think, okay, he has collaborated with people, probably there's a good work. Now, like I told you, how important is a title of a movie. Like that, the first few scenes we see in the movie, the hero is being introduced in a very especially Mr. Rajinikanth, the mass way of his introduction actually attract people. That's what an abstract is about your paper. The reviewer, as soon as he see your title, he see the affiliations of where your research has been done, your keywords, he jump into your abstract. Your abstract play a massive role in making up the mind of the reviewer, whether he gonna read the paper completely or not. So this is the first step. Okay, say for example, when you write an abstract, you at least correct it with your supervisors 10 times. Make sure it's a standalone reading text. When someone like your title, your abstract should be an extension of your title. When you read it, the reviewer should think, okay, nice, he has done this work, and he has come up with some new methods, and this are the results he's expecting to present. And like, you have to follow these three terms: what was done, what you did, and what did you find. If you manage to answer this three questions in 250 words to 300 words, that's the success of the abstract. That's when you can be very sure probably your paper will be accepted. Most of the journals, you also have to check one thing before submitting abstract. Most of the journals have word limit. Make sure you always follow the format of the research. And this person, who is he next to Albert Einstein? That's my favorite, Shakespeare. Even in the field of research and publication of papers, even if Shakespeare write a paper, the reviewer will automatically say that, oh, your English is not good. So so make sure you perfect your abstract to an extent that the reviewer cannot find any complaints in your English. Naturally, when you become a researcher, your English writing also groom, no matter which geographical area you come from. So please be careful of that. Make sure you make it a standalone text. That text should convey a story, and then there's no English errors, and also it also satisfies the requirement of the journals. So what we have seen is how important it is to have a good title, how important it is to have collaborations, how important is the keyword, now how important is abstract. Now I would like to introduce this software called Grammarly. I'm sure most of you know it. It's a free software where you can actually cut, copy, paste your writings and find out the mistake. It can be tuned to a scientific requirement or a storyline or a general requirement in any format. So start to use Grammarly. When you write abstract, cut, copy, paste your abstract to the Grammarly, and it will suggest you the spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, and mostly this is based on American English and British English. So this is where the standard writing of publishing text is being mostly adopted. So you start to use Grammarly from now. Okay, this is a very interesting factor called drunken uncle test. I'm sorry, this this term would work more for Western world, because we have a group meetings usually on Thursday evenings. Here in universities, alcohol is illegal. Everyone drinks alcohol. The supervisors are like mildly drunk on Thursday night and they're very drunk on Friday night. And that's when some of them ask you, how is your research going? If you're able to convince them that you're doing a good research and able to convey all your ideas to them, even in that drunken stage, that means you're doing a good research. As a matter of joke, don't take this very harshly. Um, so it's very important that you are able to speak about your research to anybody very confidently. This is where the competitions like 3 minutes thesis competition and 10 minutes presentation competitions are very important for a PhD student. Most of the time in conferences, again, at the evenings of the conferences, there's quite a lot of alcohol. That's where you find your professor as well. You go meet a random professor and tell like, hello professor, I have read your papers. In the future I would like to work with you or collaborate with you or start a job position with you. Some of them could be drunk. Make sure you are confident enough to speak about your research to them in a very effective way so that they remember you even in the next morning. So this is where your abstract plays a very important role. When you're able to summarize your abstract nicely to your friend or to your supervisor or to your colleague, you would be able to speak about your research to anybody. Your speaking skills have not much of role to play here. When you're able to write a good abstract, you're still able to talk about it. So this is where the drunken uncle test plays a very important role. Okay, now you have done a very good research. You have a very nice title. You have a good abstract, and the reviewer is thinking to accept your paper. There's something very important. It's called writing a cover letter to the reviewer along with your publication. So here's one of my cover letter, which is less than 1 page, not more than 1 page. Just have a look. I will send you through this to everyone after the presentation is over. Okay. What is a perfect cover letter? A perfect cover letter is like the a teaser of a movie or the trailer of the movie. You tell everything in a very concise, nice way and present it to the reviewer like the directors presented to the audience. Your aim is to sell your paper. Now you got to tell the reviewer why I chose you. Reviewer, you are in my area of research and your publications has impressed me so much. I felt it is very important to get a recognition from a well-reputed person like you. Make sure there is no spelling mistakes or careless mistakes. And always address the editor by his name. And if you make any mistakes in his name, that's when the reviewer gets so angry. He think like, oh, he can't even type my name properly, what he would have done in the paper. And especially a person like me who have 6 names, you will be so confused to write which of the 6. So you better write all the name along with a doctor, professor, whatever titles he hold. So no spelling mistakes. Make sure you address the reviewer by name, and do not cut, copy, paste your abstract. The problem most of the people does is, hi reviewer, dear reviewer, Dr. Sultan, this is my area of this is my abstract. I'm sure you will find my paper interesting. Hoping forward to publish my paper with you. This is a very bad abstract. You have to go explain why your research is important. Because I have used new methods, new technology, which doesn't exist. And do not say a lie as well, which is already exist, and you say that it never existed. The reviewer will easily find it, and he will tell to the other reviewers that this guy is a liar. He exaggerate things. You make sure you very careful of what you say in the abstract. Don't make it like too long, don't make it too short. 1 page is good. And you also present some of your results. You tell them, in the literature it has achieved this much of efficiency, and in my paper I have used all these techniques and achieved a higher efficiency than that's existing in the literature. So it's like you present every positive thing about your paper on the cover letter. Sometimes you got to be very open to the reviewers. The reviewers like that as well. Tell them that I submitted this paper already to a particular journal and it got rejected. At the same time, the reviewer, some rejections are come with suggestions as well. They tell you that, oh, we didn't find this. I wish you can address these things in your manuscript. Or sometimes you get a review from somebody, but you think that you cannot address that review. It is also okay to tell the reviewer that they asked for all these corrections, and I was able to do most of it, and I'm resubmitting that my journal to your journal just because I think the quality of the manuscript has been significantly improved after taking in the corrections from the other reviewer. So it's okay to say that. No reviewer, don't think that once if your paper is rejected or you cannot take all the comments from the other reviewer, you cannot say that to a new journal. You can tell everything very honestly to them, and I have changed all these things, I have modified all these things, and I'm sure you will find my paper interesting. This way of communicating with them, this way of conveying how you like to approach the problem, a lot of reviewers like it. They like your honesty. At the same time, they will not judge your data as well. Lot of people, they fake data. It is becoming very quite common in the scientific world. So when you're being very honest with the reviewer, he actually think, oh, this guy is genuine, so I can judge his data as well, trust his data as well. So this is what a perfect cover letter means. Okay, now these are all some general terms. Make sure we have perfect figures, perfect English, perfect statistics, understandable abstract, everything in a right format according to the journal's requirement, and also the other points I'm going to address in the future. Okay, now a response letter after correction. You have submitted your paper and the reviewer has given certain number of corrections, and you have taken all the corrections in and you're sending the paper back to the reviewer. Again, you have to write a response letter. Let me show you how does a response to the reviewer letter looks like. Okay. Dear Professor Kirk Eschans, thank you very much for reviewing our manuscript. The comments from both the reviewers are extremely useful and they are carefully addressed in the revised manuscript. As the response to the reviewer 1, the entire manuscript was read and the language was perfected, and it is highlighted in yellow. The references requested are added. The long-term stability of the material is added. A proper explanation is provided to the other questions raised as well. As a response to the reviewer 2, the optical band gap of the materials are performed and it is added in the page number 8 and 15. The characterization of is performed by Dr. Enrico della Gaspera and he is added in the manuscript. So when they ask more questions, you address everything to them point by point. This is just the cover letter. After this, I will show you how to actually address every single question of them. So look, I have added a new author to the paper because we didn't have that characterization in our laboratory. So we have to send it to Australian National University to characterize it. So Dr. Enrico della Gaspera, he did it. So I've also added him in the manuscript. And I tell them we believe that ACS Applied Materials interfaces provide an outstanding platform to rapidly communicate these significant findings to the broad readership, and given the widespread interest in acetone sensing for several applications that includes non-invasive devices for breath analysis. I would like you to thank you for your consideration of this work. Please let me know if you have any other queries about a manuscript. So this is the second letter I've wrote him. Unfortunately, these this cover letter and the review letters are more like a love letter. It has to be very pleasing to the reviewer. Now, I would like to share some of the response to the manuscripts. Say, for example, okay, here are two reviewers who have actually given all the things. First one, the English may be polished in the revision. Trust me, everybody in my lab or from English speaking country or, I wrote the paper. I haven't research experience for last 8 years, and I have traveled to Britain, America, and a lot of other places. And still they say English may be polished. So never get offended by that comment. If you know, people from India, Africa, we have a very strong grammar and sentence structure. Not people from the Western world, they don't even have a proper sentence structure. So for them, the way we write English look weird to them. That's strange to them. They think the way we write is not so good. But actually, trust me, we write better English than them. So never get offended by that. When you see such comments, make sure you go here and there in the manuscript and change few words, and tell them, or give it to a friend who is good in English, or give it to somebody in an English department to see through the language. So it is very important to do an internal audit of your publications within your laboratory or your research team, before sending it to the reviewer. The one thing my supervisors always been very strict of is the internal audit of our papers. Before sending out, they have actually put me in tough situations, to make sure that I do every single corrections before the reviewer find out anything. During the review times of the paper are the harshest time I had with my supervisors. I literally used to hate them for being really strict with me in such aspects. If you are a supervisor and you're listening to me, make sure you become really, really strict with your students when it comes to literature survey and also reading their papers. So the reviewer asked some references. I have added the references. Then he asked me to do some band gap testing, which I did, and I explained it in a separate document what I did. And I also added those texts back into the manuscript and told them, I'm clearly telling all these things. Regarding the long-term stability, the supporting text is added to the result and discussion part. A figure is added to figure 11. And the below text is added to the manuscript on page 30. So what I'm trying to tell from this is a very clear representation of the amendments. In the first letter, that is when you're submitting, you explain what you have done in the paper. After the corrections, after the review, you amend it. When you send it back to them, you tell them again what are the amendments that you made and add a separate document and show them that you have done everything that you have asked. Here again, a human nature, the factor of egoism comes in. Excuse me. When the reviewer finds that you have obliged to all their requests, they actually like you. They say, okay, okay, he's a nice guy. Let me get his paper published. So this is the very important aspect to get your paper published in a high impact journals again. Okay, now, like I told you, excuse me, it's like I told you, a good title, good abstract, good keywords, then a good cover letter, then addressing all the requirements of the amendments in a separate document, and again replying back to them with a reply cover letter is all important. At the same time, how your manuscript looks like is very important for a high impact publication. You know what? I'd like to be very honest with you. I've been in the field of research for the last 11 years, and I've been out of social media for a very long time. If you ask me, I recently opened a Facebook account after 5 years. It's just because I was so focused into my world of research, and this WhatsApp, this PUBG, and these things were so far away from me. So it is, and also the one thing we haven't realized is, we always say that, oh, in India I don't have expensive softwares, this and that, but these two figures that I'm showing you right now is done with Word. Trust me, I used Word and PowerPoint to do this. If you explore the potentials of what Word, Microsoft Word and PowerPoint can do, you can significantly improve the quality of your manuscript. Okay, now review option in Word. This is again a power of Word. Say for example, whenever I've written a paper, I send it to my supervisor. He date it and save it as a copy. So what he does, he used this review mode in Microsoft Word, where you actually can comment line by line in any document. Say for example, if I want to comment on this abstract, I go type near the abstract and give a good comment. Spelling mistake. I can type everything that I want to convey using this comment mode. You know, this is also a sort of a documenting process. So most of the students, what they do, when you give them comments over phone or talk to them in person, they sort of sometimes forget some of them, and sometimes they don't like to do it, so they don't do it. But when you do this in a review mode and email your student, you actually can go back to this document and have his new document on the other side and say, okay, I've asked you to change this, have you done this? I've asked you to take off these sentences and write it in a different way, have you done this? So you can actually cross check, and this is more like an internal quality audit. So my supervisors were very strict on this, and now I follow the same trend with my students. They can't escape from a single comment that I made. Say for example, one of my supervisor, Dr. Ilis, he said, delete this jargon and mention some highlight regarding the sensor performance. So this is actually a very important comment. Now he also go write some of the things. He say, Sultan, this can be written in a different way. Sometimes he also give me references and say, like, Sultan, go read this paper, you will get more idea from this. So this is actually guiding your student in a very systematic way, using this reviewing, and this is all available just inside Word. It's not even a fancy thing. So I encourage all of you to start to explore the potentials that the Word and the PowerPoint has. And make sure you start everything with this reviewing mode. I really wish I can sit and show how many times abstract take one dimension to other in a reviewing process with my supervisor. I would write one word, he will delete it completely and change it to a different statement. So I'd like to skim through this document to all of you to see how he has read the entire document. All the red color is my supervisor's correction. This one of the oldest paper. See the whole document. It means he's reading my entire document and he's commenting on it. Can you believe this? Even if he will change is to was, the developed senses and apostrophe s, and throughout the document he has made corrections. I would like to still skim through and just to show you that he reads my entire document. This is very important to get to a high impact journal. Yes, I do understand in India, we all have a lot of teaching assignments. There's quite a lot of administrative work for a professor or for a staff. Do we have that much time to address a student's paper like this? But I think finding this time to invest on your student, to enrich them, is very important. So you can see how systematically I have drawn all the figures, make it look good so that the reviewer will not have much complaints to address my paper. You can also see how clear the images are, how the title figures are written. So this is the last page of my paper, and you can see he has read it to the last bit. So I urge all of you to spend more time in reading your paper, reading your student's paper before it go out to the reviewer. You know, you should be the first reviewer of your paper. Some of your colleagues should be your first reviewer, and your own professor should be your first reviewer. This is when a student will not struggle much in the reviewing process. Not as a matter of sharing it as a pride, but you know, just to encourage all of you from my experience. Most of my papers get published in the place that I want to publish. It is just because I myself think, you know, what the reviewer would ask. I've always in a fear and a sense of insecurity that, oh, probably he might ask this, and I will work on it in much beforehand. Before I send it to the review. Now, drawing schematic diagrams is also very important. Like the way you publish your papers, draw graphs. This schematics are absolutely important. It's a software called Blender. It's an absolutely free software. You can download it, and you can make any sort of shapes. Say, for example, you're doing a satellite communication. You can actually pictorially represent your experimental process in a figure like this, or you're designing a medical diagnosis setup, or a medical instrumentation, or a coding, or anything. A good flow chart, a good figure like this always impresses the reviewer. Most of the time, you know, this is my what do you call, what I'm sharing is a fault that I sometimes come across. Sometime when I see very attractive figures like this, I sort of think, okay, maybe this is a good journal. If I do not read that paper with a complete mindfulness, these figures mislead me and trick my mind that possibly this is a good journal. But sometimes when I go read the text of the paper, it's not really a significant work, but it's just presented very glamorously. Again, a movie comes into play. You know, how beautifully you portray your paper convinces a reviewer. But these are all supporting tools. You do a good work, and also you have a nice figures and nice schematic diagrams like this. The reviewer get impressed, and he sort of think, okay, this is really good for a high impact publication. Okay, again, I've already introduced you to Mentally. I introduced you to the power of Word and PowerPoint. Here, then before this slide, I introduced you to Blender, and now Origin. Origin is like an Excel thing where you can pictorially represent a data. You can draw figures, you can plot graphs, different kinds of graphs using the software. Again, this is a free software available in the internet. I'm also happy to send you through all of you the trial version of it. So draw all your figures legibly like this. Trust me, sometimes when I receive papers from India, I get so angry that they did not even put a considerable amount of effort in presenting their results. If you see this graphs, they're very legible and they're organized in a proper way. But sometimes when I receive a paper from the Indian subcontinent, one graph is in one size, the other one is in a different size, and it's not plotted properly, it's not labeled properly, the colors are not right. Most of the time it's very misleading. They say something in the writing and the graphs look different. So it is very, very important to draw graphs legibly like this. This is also some of my graphs that I draw in Origin. You can see it is very legible, and it clearly conveys what I'm trying to convey. Most of the time in science, when you're in that same field of research for 5-6 years, you don't have to read the paper. If you see the diagrams, you'll be able to understand what that paper actually says. This could be applicable to coding and other areas as well. Sorry. Okay, now sometimes you might ask me a question. Oh, I do most of my work in MATLAB, and I might have to present my documents into my figures using MATLAB. What you can do, you can extract the raw data and draw really legible graphs like this in the main paper and put the MATLAB original figures in the supporting information. That way, you have the original MATLAB pictures and also graphs, and also this graph which is legibly drawn. So always take advantage of the softwares that are free and around, so that you take you get a pass from the reviewer. Okay, now I spoke a lot about the literature survey in the beginning, but it is very important to have a certain amount of comparison literature survey. Mostly in the introduction part, we do write some literature survey, but if you compare your results with the existing result, that actually impresses the reviewer. Say, for example, here is my one of the comparison literature survey that I had in my paper. I said, oh, they did fabricated these materials, they tested in these conditions. But what you see in red color is my work, how my material has a leap and advantages over the existing ones. So likewise, you can find out some of the existing literature and compare it with your results. So this actually eradicate any confusion in a reviewer mind. They think, oh, this is definitely a good work, so this has to be published in a high impact factor. Now, citing your reviewers, this is very important. Most of the journals allow you to choose your reviewers. Say, for example, let me go in a funny context so that it can be demonstrated easily. Say, for example, you're choosing me as your reviewer. What you do, you go read some of my papers and cite 5 papers of mine. So, you know what some people do? As soon as they get a paper for review, they go check whether some of their papers are cited. If their papers are cited, they get very happy and they have a very positive feeling about you. Again, a psychology and politics. So if you choose me as as your reviewer, cite some of my papers, which will make me feel happy. Okay. Number two, if you have done a really good work, choose a reviewer exactly from that field. But again, they're going to give you a tough time. If you're ready to face all those things, choose them. Otherwise, say for example, I do gas sensing, I do light sensing, I do breath analysis, I do gas chromatography. There's quite a lot of projects that I'm involved in. Say for example, if you go read my profile, you will understand that my strong point is not gas chromatography, but I'm also doing some research in gas chromatography. But your research is strongly on gas chromatography. So what you can do is still choose me as a reviewer and cite some of my papers. What will happen is when the paper come to me, I will not really have extensive knowledge of what you have done, but I do know what it is. I hope you all get this point. So I will not have the intellectual capability to judge you 100%, but still the paper has come to me. What I will do is I will try my level best to give some feedbacks. Since I'm not an expert in that area, I might give a really stupid comment, or I might ask you a few questions that are really stupid, illogical, and make you feel like I'm a fool. So this happens a lot in the area of publishing. You know, we always choose somebody, someone who is on the field but not an expert in that field. But sometimes the reviewers, the main journal communication department also reject your choice of reviewers because they know that your area of research is not 100% of the reviewer's area of interest. So you got to be very wise in choosing these strategies, that someone who look like that person but not really expert in that area. So this is very important. Make sure you always cite your reviewers, and you can also self-cite some of your papers. Say for example, in one paper you have, again, I'm taking a funny way of putting this. Say for example, you have constructed Taj Mahal in one half in one paper, and the next half you're constructing the other part of Taj Mahal. So what you can see, in my previous paper I have constructed half, and in this paper I'm constructing the other half. So both papers together, it looks like the beautiful Taj Mahal. So it's called self-citation. You appreciate your own work in order to make the reviewer realize that you are someone and you're capable of something, and whatever you have displayed here is not a new research, but it's been some fundamental research done by you previously. So these citations are very important. Citing your own research, citing your reviewers. Okay, now Turnitin, plagiarism. If you see, there's quite a lot of problem, especially from the Indian subcontinent, that people actually plagiarize work. Yes, you're allowed to read others' papers and construct sentences based on what they have said, but you're not allowed to completely cut, copy, paste their way of writing. So this is where a lot of people get caught. If your plagiarism limit goes more than 35%, most of the people think that, reviewers think that you're not a very reliable person, and they also convey this message to the journal that do not receive any papers from this person anymore because he plagiarized. And so be careful on that. Never ever plagiarize. Try not to. Yeah, absolutely not to, because this actually spoil your reputation. But you can rewrite those sentences and use a software called Turnitin. I heard last time I had a conversation with an IAS officer from DOT. He did mention to me that Anna University is trying to facilitate Turnitin very shortly, and Alagappa University already has a different Turnitin software. And you can also send it to me sometime if you like to check your papers. I can do Turnitin checks for you if you don't have those softwares. But
I strongly urge universities to invest on this software, which is important in the field of research. So make sure you do not plagiarize at all. Okay, how to deal with rejection? Say, for example, you have done everything possible and still your paper got rejected, but don't worry, it's not the end of the world. It's definitely not the end of the world. If it's got rejected in one journal, you move on, happily move on, keep you positive, and to the other journal. Um, at the same time, every journal gives you a lesson. When you fail, don't take it negatively. If you don't fail, you don't have a courage to stay in the field of research. um, just accept your failures, learn from your failures, and I think this is the resilience we need to develop. Even if you fall 100 times, it's okay. I think you should always have the courage to stand up and move forward. My life, not I haven't lived 60 or 70 years to save my life, but whatever that I have lived in the past is all about resilience. I would like to share a personal experience of me, what happened in Syed Amal Engineering College. So I was very curious child right from the childhood. Even in my school, I used to be very creative. Even when I was in Syed Amal Engineering College, um, um, I did not. That was the time the internet was not very famous. So we used to have internet in our university, sorry, in our college until 12 o'clock. So I used to stay back after the college in the internet laboratory until 12 o'clock. And my college is 7 kilometers away from the Ramanathapuram district. And most of the days I used to catch the 11:45 last bus to get home. Sometimes I've ridden with random people on especially the lorries and bikes. So I think this is the resilience we need to develop. We've been complaining quite a lot about what we don't have, but we can't continue to, blame the nameless and faceless thing and feed our insecurities. We need to use what we have. Look around and look for every possibilities to enhance ourselves. Not as a matter of advice, but something I would like to share. I have friends, and I have a lot of my teachers, university friends doing PhD, and they often complain, Sultan, I don't have this, I don't have that. All I would like to tell you is, make best out of what you have. At the same time, deal with the rejection. Yeah, rejections are always there. We need to fail every single day to become very strong. Okay, now, sorry for that philosophy. It just flew in very naturally. Okay, I'm gonna show you just a second. Supporting informations. How important is supporting information? Okay. Say, for example, you have a laboratory setup, and you did a lot of experiments using quite a lot of laboratory setup, experimental setup. Sometimes the reviewer asks you, can you share some of the pictures of your laboratory setup? Just because they doubt your data. They think maybe this data is fake. Maybe I would like to confirm that this person has done using a setup. So at the same time, you have to split your manuscript into two categories. One is the main manuscript, the other one is the supporting information. In the supporting information, you make sure you add all the additional data, which is important but not so important. Like, I would like to share this supporting information. Look again, my friends, my supervisor, he still reads everything. You can see his what do you call, his comments, even in the supporting information. So this is the experimental setup that I did. I have that picture of that in the supporting information, and I'm explaining that very carefully here for the reviewer to understand it. Again, there is a chemical reaction that happened, which is not so important for the main manuscript, but I am adding it in the supporting information. Again, you can see this is how I measure some of my samples, which the reviewer doesn't even need to know, but I don't want him to ask that question later. How did you do this? So in advance, I've drawn a small schematic in the supporting information, and I've explained how I do that. See, all the red color you see is the comments from my supervisor. So this sort of graphs, which are not so important in the main graph, but I don't want the reviewer to ask these questions to me later. So I sort of explain everything to him that he might possibly ask me later in the supporting information. Everything. So this is the importance of, and you can see even in my supporting information, I have a lot of references where I have taken all these references from. So a supporting information is an enhancing tool to improve your quality of your manuscripts. So please, if you have a source code, please put that in the supporting information. If you have an experimental setup, put that in the supporting information. Like I said, when I did experiments on 25 volt and 50 volt, when my experimental setup got burnt, I put the images in the supporting information. So I literally miss nothing so that the reviewer finds any complaint to get back to me. So equip yourself like that in every possible way before you submit it. Okay, so usually we start with really high impact expectations, and slowly we start to submit papers in high impact, and something might go wrong. You know, we continue to amend it and improve the quality of it. I'm sure finally every journal will find its place. You know, like we say that you know, everyone has a destiny, every paper has a destiny. So don't stress too much. You work hard and you take all precautionary measures to improve the quality of the paper, and I'm sure one day it will find its way. And these are two important statements that you need to make at the end of any journal, no matter what is the type of, or the what is the nature of the journal. Number one is conflict. You make sure you declare that there is no conflict between the authors. In case if you're doing that project using certain discovery funds, you acknowledge that, and you acknowledge all your, you know, sometime there's two difference: a person who contribute to the paper or person who support the paper. This is a very misunderstood concept in India. Say for example, someone read your paper and give you suggestions, and that person expect you to add him as one of the author. It's not a scientific contribution, it's just you know, a support. You acknowledge those people. Sometimes somebody give their lab setup to use it for a week, but they have not contributed anything for the science of the work. You do not add them as an author, you always acknowledge them. So I have this very dear friend, Dr. Blake Plowman. He did his a PhD from Oxford, then he did his postdoctoral research in Oxford. Now he works for the Australian government as an intellectual property rights officer in the Department of Science. Me and Dr. Blake had an opportunity to spend a lot of time here in Melbourne. So every time I submit a paper, I give it to Dr. Blake for proofreading. So he does, this is after my supervisor's corrections. When everything is taken in, when we are ready to send the paper to the journal, I usually give it to Blake. He is really good at finding mistakes. So again, this is a final screening of my manuscript. I'm sure we have people around us. There's a lot of people in your lab. So make sure you give your journal to somebody to read and get their feedbacks, which is really, really important. So do acknowledge people. That's very important in the field of research, because at the end of the day, when someone look for Dr. Blake Plowman, he would have read at least 100 papers, proof checked 100 papers. So this is a recognition for the effort that he has contributed to the science in terms of proofreading manuscripts. So share knowledge, share papers with everyone. And finally, I hope this session was very useful to all of you. But I would like to do a small recap of what we discussed. Number one is the importance of literature survey. Number two is identifying your research questions. Number three is collaborations. Number four is having a plan A, plan B, plan C, a plan P1, P2. Number five, understanding the expectations of a reviewer and how does a psychology of a reviewer work. Number six, importance of the title. The title shouldn't be too long, too short. A title should itself tell a story, and a title should never be able to find by Google. Number seven, writing an abstract. An abstract should be a standalone text which should completely convey what is your research is about, addressing this three questions: why this research is done, how you did it, and what are the findings. Number eight is Grammarly, using a software like that. Number nine is a drunken uncle test, which is not really applicable to India, but you should be able to have conversation with your supervisors even around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the night, talking about your research. That clear that you should be off your research. Number 10 is a perfect cover letter. Do not make any mistakes on the name of the reviewer. Choose your reviewer wisely, and make sure you write a nice teaser or a trailer of your paper in your review. Then let's leave this numbers. I'm not good at math. Then when all your corrections are done, you make sure you write a response review letter with what all the modifications that you make. Not just that, an additional document that have the reviewer's question and how you addressed it, and where are those sentences or in the main manuscript. Now, I told you to explore the power of Microsoft Office and PowerPoint, how important it is. Then using the review option in Word, I strongly encourage all the supervisors and professors to guide through your students using review mode. Now using the software called Blender to make schematic diagrams like this. Then using Origin to draw legible graphs. And have a literature survey in comparison with others, how your manuscript has been considerably good in comparison to others. The tricks of citing your reviewers. Always choose a reviewer who's not very strong in your area of research, but he has to have some expertise in that area of research. Make sure you always cite some of your previous work that have relevance with your current work. Make sure you cite at least 3-4 papers of your reviewer. before submitting the paper, make sure you do turn it in and never get deprived of rejections. Make sure you have supporting information which actually give a lot of evidence to the reviewer that you have done a good work, and make sure you acknowledge, also understand the difference between contribution and acknowledgement. Someone who have contributed for in terms of science or work should definitely deserve an authorship, but someone who have helped you on the way, you acknowledge them in your papers. And finally, I have a big acknowledgement for for all those people who helped me to get here, especially the Sayyid Amal Engineering College. I will start with the correspondent, Dr. Chinadre Abdullah, who been an eminent guide in my life. He's not just a correspondent to me, he's more personal to me. I had an opportunity to work with him quite a lot in the road tract organization, yes. And I do understood how magnanimous person he is. I thank the head of the department, Electronics and Communication Engineering, my dear Mahendran sir, who gave me all liberties, all chances, and all sort of advice, and to guide me in a way that I have molded myself as a very disciplined researcher. He was a very strict person, but today when I think back, his lessons are absolutely important in shaping the person I am. I thank Dr. Siti Shamim Fatima, who is a family to me, who's been a very keen guide and who is still walking with me as a very dear friend. And there's two beautiful person that I need to mention in the early stages of my research. Number one is Dr. Rajashekar, Department of Physics. You know, I can still call him Rajashekar because he's more a friend to me than a staff. He always dealt with me and other students as a friend. You know, every interval, every lunchtime, there's a bunch of students in the physics department having very productive conversations about him, joking with him, joking physics, joking science. I think this attitude is very important for a guide. You know, no matter how strict you are when it comes to research, but you need to be a very nice person to deal with a student in terms of psychology. Because, you know, people like me, we were always on very expensive scholarship, which paid our college fees, which gave us stipend, which paid our travel. But I do acknowledge the fact that students in India, they have a lot of personal issues, financial issues, family issues, relationship issues. But on the top, this PhD becomes a big pile of uncomfort and discomfort for them. But it can be eased by the supervisors and friends. You know, liberate them and be a friend to them in every possible way. So the Rashaya was a very important person at the early stages of my research career. Then Mrs. Tenmoli Balakrishnan. I was really bad at math right from the childhood, but today things have changed. You know, I do quantum mechanics and I do linear algebra, regression analysis, statistical analysis. But at that point of time, I don't know, for some reason, my mathematical skills wasn't working well. So she used to give special attention to me. You know, she always told me that you're a very special person, special child. You know, if you're not able to do certain things, it doesn't really discriminate you in becoming successful person. I would like to emphasize this point to all the supervisors. You know, your students sometime may not have certain skills, but find alternate ways of exploring their talents. For example, if they're not good at coding, find an alternative options for them to achieve the same result in a different way. Still, I'm not good at coding. I don't know, coding doesn't work for me. My supervisors understood it at a very early stage. So they actually collaborated me with a friend who helped me with coding. He used to write coding for my sensing experiments, and I've always included him in my publications. Then Tenmoli Madam, then my dear friend Naharajan sir. He was the head of the department computer science few years ago, and I don't know what is he right now, but from the time of 15 years I know him, he's still the same Nagarajan sir. What he did, I wanted to go for a competition in Hyderabad, a paper presentation. Nagarajan sir gave me his experimental setup, that is a Zigbee testing tool. He spent so much time with me explaining how does that modules work, how do I operate. I went to Hyderabad and I got a cash prize of 10,000 and a national award for exhibiting that. What I realized is his compassion. You know, I was in electronics and communication department, and he was in computer science. When I approached him, he was very happy enough to show me whatever knowledge he could share. I think this is a positivity we all need to attain to help each other. You know, not being captured by this, you know, this demonism of politics and egoism, multilateralism. So we need to come together in favoring our students in every possible way. Then my dear friend Jay Saravanan, you know, whenever I had time, I would always go to him and learn more about his research. Then Dr. Sharif, he was principal of my college for a while, and he and Dr. Selva Kumar together, they helped me to get to China in publishing a paper that got the best paper award. Then in return, I got a government award as well. So that actually sparked me. You know, I got so much media attention. I was appreciated everywhere I went. So please continue to encourage your students, even if you see them, they're not doing well. Always have a word of positivity. You know, you can do it, everything will be okay. What I can do, can I connect you with some of my friends who can assist you? So put them into all sort of channels. If you know, the sort of research that I published in China was a computational fluid dynamics of afterburner, which actually works on a rocket science and computation fluid dynamics, thermodynamics all together. Dr. Selva Kumar spent considerable amount of time with me teaching those topics. Then I would like to thank all the staffs of electronics and communication department, especially two special person, that is Mr. Karupaswamy and Dr. Priya. They both of them taught me medical electronics. You know, these two were very extraordinary teachers. Priyaka would always have some journal papers and she would give it to me, you know, ask me to read those and think more of that. Karupaswamy sir was not even teaching me that subject. He was teaching in the other section of the class, but still I would go discuss with him. He gifted me my first pen drive, which was 750 rupees, which I wasn't able to pay him back at the time. And he said, Nana, this is my gift for your career of research. Then so many other people. There was Jyotiaka, Nisharani, Revati, Raghavendran sir, Islabuddin, Sharmilaka. There's so many people who actually made me feel like a family. Not just that, there's teaching staff, non-teaching staff. Everyone has played a very important role in shaping me the person who I am. So thank you for everything. And later I have big stories of traveling to America, to Britain. In every place, all I met was people of positivity. You know, this is very, very, very important in the field of research, because research itself mind-boggling and it's really quite stressful. We got to be very positive to each other in every possible way. That is my major aim of speaking of 5 minutes of acknowledgement. Once again, here is my certificate that I got in China. which started with Sayyid Amal Engineering College. So no matter where you come from, who you are, what are the facilities you have, doesn't stop you from going anywhere. Very recently, I got the Global Distinguished Talent Award from the Australian government, which is extremely prestigious. This is for me proposing a new concept of discovering corona from human breath. So there's only sky is the limit when it comes to education. Keep yourself positive. Here's my email address. If you have any questions or doubts or any help, if you want some literature I can download and send it to you, I'm happy to do that. But I would also like to tell you that I'm not an expert of everything. I know a few drops of the ocean of research. So do not ask me technical question or don't push your work on me. But when it comes to general help, I'm always there for you, and I'm making it very clear here. And don't worry, you all will be fine. We all will be successful, and we all will come out of this COVID situation and have a very prosperous second half of 2020, I believe, if not at least 2021. So stay safe, work on the positivity, and the other thing that I want to mention, that this COVID-19 has explored the virtual opportunities that we can have. From now you can have discussion with your students through Teams or Zoom. You can have that 30 minutes of discussion with your student every week using this, even on a weekend. So that's the best thing Corona has taught us, but we should have learned this at least 10 years ago. And we should never be a nation of finding solutions on an emergency, but a nation of finding everything and equipped in a much better and in terms of time and technology. Thank you once again, everyone. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Sultan. Please wait for a while. Participants, you can put your question in the chat box. Wonderful presentation, Sultan.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, bringing me here into this platform. Okay, someone asked me a question. What is Mentally? Go type Mentally on Google. It's free to download. You can download either on an Apple computer or on a Windows computer. Start to explore it. There's also tutorials on YouTube how to use it. Now, someone asked me, what is the difference between a PDF and a PhD? A PhD is walking with a stick. That stick is your supervisors. They're always there to give you ideas, support. You are allowed to make a lot of mistakes. The PhD itself, a learning part, it is not an excellence part. You're preparing yourself, you're training yourself to become someone in the future. But a PDF is entirely an individual journey. You got to write proposals, grant proposals to bring money. You got to do your research on your own. Any mistake that you make, you are responsible for that mistake, because you already had a 5 years of or 4 years of PhD experience to learn and make mistakes. So you cannot make much of mistakes in your postdoctoral research. So, and in as a postdoctoral researcher, you are expected to guide a lot of students. So this is the major difference between a postdoctoral researcher and a PhD student. How can I identify impact factors? If you go type in Google, say for example, if you're doing research in the field of cybersecurity, go type in Google and ask them like the best journals of cybersecurity. It does highlight your journals according to the impact factors you have. So so you will get and identify what are the high impact factors. then how to become a reviewer. Okay, so when you have published enough papers as a high impact researcher, most of the journals, they approach you to become a reviewer. So it's not mostly your choice, it's mostly the journal's choice. Sometime you can also write to the reviewing company saying that I have published these many number of journals and I have an expertise in this area. Is it possible that I become a reviewer of your journal? You can either they choose you or you can apply for that. On time to time, there's also advertisements in LinkedIn and on internet for reviewers. So this is how you become a reviewer. Give me 1 minute. Thank you for all your kind words. I'm reading really nice things about this section. Okay, how to choose best paper on content or concept or original owned writing. Let me read the question again. How to choose best paper based on content, concept or original writing. Okay, so this is pretty much what I've explained to you. An original, a good paper should have a good content and also concept, and this has to be written by you. So you need to have all three of it as a combination. Is Turnitin free or paid? Mostly Turnitin is paid software. I think you should ask your college or university to get a Turnitin access to you. Okay, someone is asking, is Turnitin is better than Urkund? I think Turnitin is much better because it is connected to most of the international literature in comparison to Urkund. So I strongly encourage all of you to, use Turnitin. Now, what will be the allowable plagiarism in an article to publish? I would say less than 15%. This 15% is you cannot really avoid it because somehow it comes to a 15%. But anything more than 30% is definitely a plagiarism. Now, what is important steps are required for scientific paper review as a reviewer? I think we spoke very extensively about and how a reviewer approaches a paper. I think good title, good abstract, legible figures, and not just explaining graphs, but the concepts behind the graphs are most important to most important aspects of a reviewer. Somehow plagiarism coming to 7% when I write on my own. How to reduce it further? Like I said, anything below 15% is. Someone has asked me, somehow plagiarism is coming to 7% when I write on my own. How to reduce it further? Like I told you, it's unavoidable. Anything less than 15% is okay. Any fast publishing journals? Okay, when you go for high impact journals, they're usually a bit slow, but if you're very well prepared, like I said, if you do an internal audit for internal audit of your work much before submitting to the reviewer, that you have a supporting information, you have already imagined what sort of questions he might ask and you're prepared for it, I think that's one easy way of publishing a journal. Can you please press? Oh yeah, I will share my presentation with all of you after this. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. I've mostly answered everything. If anyone would like to ask me questions orally, would also be okay. We have another 20 minutes to go. Does anyone have questions?
Yeah, Sultan, I think that's all about the questions. I will give the email ID and presentation and YouTube link to all the participants after the filling of their.
Sure, I'll send you a
presentation.
version, modified version to you.
Yeah. Then I will share it.
I'm also happy to share my cover letter and some of my old
because most of the
manuscripts.
participants are asking this cover letter and other things also. So you just share with me. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Sultan. Wonderful presentation. This is our third session on behalf of SAEC Alumni Association we are doing. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. On behalf of our management, as well as Sayed Ahmad Engineering College Alumni Association and the principal and my behalf, thank you so much, Sultan. Wonderful session you have given. Very kind of you.
Thank you, sir. It's an absolute pleasure, and I will continue to support my college, my scholars, and my nation in every possible way I can. Continue to involve me in such activities.
Sure. We'll do it, Sultan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, participants. Thanks for your time. Once feedback you have completed, please send it to me. Thank you.
Thank you.